Ugaritic Introduction and Text Samples. Hello, welcome, and Shalamu Alaikum. This is your ancient Semitic YouTube channel, and today we'll be dealing with Ugaritic. So this will be kind of an introductory video like the last one. The last one was on Akkadian. Today we'll deal with Ugaritic. The next video will be on Hebrew, and then there will be videos on other Canaanite languages, Aramaic, Arabic, Old North Arabian, and Ugaritic South Arabian, etc., etc., etc. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably know my the plan that I have in mind, so what videos I'm planning. But today it's going to be about Ugaritic, and Ugaritic is a language, a Semitic language that has a very special place in my heart, always will have, because this is actually the language that started this whole thing I'm doing here, that started my fascination with reconstructing the pronunciation of Semitic languages, because I've had one semester of Ugaritic during my studies. I had one semester of Ugaritic during my bachelor studies, and I think that was in maybe 2011, 2010 or 2011, so quite some time ago. And Ugaritic was actually the first language that I've learned which was written in a purely consonantal script without vowel signs. So I've learned Arabic before and Biblical Hebrew, and I think I've also had one semester of Akkadian before, so all of that were vocalized. Ugaritic was the first one that did not have any vowel signs, and so our homework very often was to read a text and to vocalize the text. And so yeah, I thought that was fun to have this purely consonantal text and then figure out what vowels one might put there. And so from the question what vowels belong there, later I wondered, did they actually pronounce it like this? Did they pronounce the qaf and the ha like this, or was there any other way? So that's what started my fascination with the pronunciation, reconstructing the pronunciation of ancient languages, especially Semitic, which is also what started my YouTube channel. And I think, I don't remember, but I think the very first video on my channel, my old classic videos from 2013, I think the first one was on Ugaritic. It was probably the Baal epic in Ugaritic. So you can check that out. But yeah, I think Ugaritic was what started it all. So today I will give you a short introduction on how to read Ugaritic, some background info, and then a couple of text samples that we will read together. So have fun with this. So what is Ugaritic? Ugaritic is a Semitic language, of course, otherwise it wouldn't be featured on my channel. It is a Northwest Semitic language, which means it is related to other Semitic languages like Arabic, Giz, and Akkadian, but it is more closely related to Northwest Semitic languages, which means Aramaic, and also Canaanite. Canaanite includes Phoenician, Hebrew, and a couple of other Canaanite dialects. If you want to know more about the subgrouping of the Semitic languages, I recommend my first video on the Semitic languages. But Ugaritic is a Northwest Semitic languages, and I will show you some examples on why it counts as Northwest Semitic, because this is not just purely a geographical term, but it is Northwest Semitic because of certain features that it has, like phonological, morphological, lexical features. So yeah, I will show you some examples later. It is attested only for a very short time, from the 13th to 12th century BCE, and it is only attested in one single place, namely the ancient city-state of Ugarit, which was probably called Ugarito in Ugaritic. Nowadays it's in Syria, near a place named Ras Shamra, and the ruins of that city were discovered in the 1920s, and with it also the written documents and the proof of the Ugaritic language was discovered. So it is a relatively newly discovered language, having been discovered in the 20th century. Yeah, and it was only tested for a very short time because Ugarit was sacked and destroyed by the so-called Sea Peoples in the 12th century BCE, and at that point the written attestations of Ugaritic ended. Maybe it became extinct, but maybe the culture just collapsed and the people stopped writing, and yeah, I don't know exactly what happened, but we only have those written evidence for that short time. It's possible that Ugaritic is identical to Amorite, or that is a dialect of Amorite. We don't know exactly what Amorite was, so the Amorites were people mentioned, or maybe a group of peoples mentioned by Akkadians, and we have some ideas what Amorite was, because some people mentioned in Akkadian texts were known to be Amorite, what the Akkadians called Amorite, and so their personal names that are clearly West Semitic and not East Semitic like Akkadian. We know some of their personal names, and so those names can be identified as being Amorite. Still, we don't know exactly what Amorite was. We don't have real written attestations of Amorite. Maybe it was just an umbrella term for a broader group of different nomadic or semi-nomadic Semitic-speaking peoples in that area. Maybe similar to how the Romans used terms like Germanic for a group of peoples that not all of them necessarily spoke Germanic languages, and which also excluded some Germanic-speaking tribes and peoples, etc. So it's hard to define what Amorite was and if there was an Amorite language. But if there was, well, there was an Amorite language, but let me say it like this. Whatever it was, Ugaritic may have been part of it, because it's what we know from the city of Ugarit, what we found there is similar to what is preserved in Amorite personal names. How similar? Is it identical? I don't think the material is enough, but this is just an idea. Still, during the rest of this video, I will just refer to this language I'm treating here as Ugaritic. I will not call it Amorite, because it's just something that cannot be proven so far. And yeah, so I've made this map, and this map shows the this may have been the approximate area where Amorite, if it existed as a single language or single dialect continuum, this may have been the approximate area, where it was spoken. You see the city-state of Ugarit here in red, this tiny red square. And to the west of that area we would have Canaanite, and to the east we would have Akkadian and Aramaic to the south, whatever was spoken in the Arabian Peninsula, so early Arabic, maybe early ancient North Arabian, and maybe other languages that just disappeared and we don't have any kind of documentation. Yeah. So like I said, this may have been what the Akkadians defined as Amorite, the Amorite-speaking area. So let's just keep that in mind. Now let's talk about some of the linguistic features. So Ugaritic, first of all, it's a West Semitic language. It's not East Semitic like Akkadian. And probably the most defining feature, or one of the most important features of West Semitic, is that they have the perfect verb form, also known as the suffix conjugation. For example, in Ugaritic we find the verb arabtu, I entered. So this is the form that you also know from Arabic, the fa'ala, fa'alat, fa'altu, etc. and the qatal in Hebrew, and the qatala in Ge'ez. So the suffix conjugation verb form, which we do not have in Akkadian, that is in East Semitic. In Akkadian we have something similar, the verbal adjective, also known as the stative, which is not the same thing as in West Semitic. It looks similar, it doesn't look identical, but it functions differently. So this is something that sets East Semitic apart from West Semitic. In Ugaritic, it clearly seems to be a perfect verb form in many cases, so it's safely West Semitic. Ugaritic is also Central Semitic. Central Semitic also contains Canaanite and Aramaic, but also Arabic and probably also Sabaic. So what are some features of Central Semitic? One of the features is the loss of the geminating, this kind of yakatal tense, the geminating prefix conjugation, which we have, for example, in Akkadian, Igammer, and in Ge'ez and other Ethio-Semitic languages, Yagemmer. But we don't have that kind of verb form in Arabic and in Sabaic and in Aramaic and in Canaanite. In those languages, we only have the yaktul or yaktal kind of verb tense. If you want to know more about these verb forms, again, my first video on the Semitic languages in general will explain this in more detail. And one other feature that is also typical for Central Semitic is that the tense, so like 20, 30, 40, 50, etc., are marked with an M suffix, so, or with a nasal suffix in general. So, for example, in Ugaritic, 30 would be thalathuma. In Arabic, you have thalathuna. In Hebrew, you have shloshim, etc. Whereas in Akkadian, you would have, in Akkadian, I think it's shilasha. Is it with sheen in Akkadian? Yes. So shilasha, and similar situation in Ethio-Semitic, for example. Okay, so the ending that looks like the masculine nominal ending to form the tense, the decades, is typical for Central Semitic. And Ugaritic is not only West Semitic, not only Central Semitic, but it is also Northwest Semitic, because, for example, in verbal and nominal roots, if they begin with Proto-Semitic waw, this Proto-Semitic waw has become ya or yod in Ugaritic. So, for example, in Ugaritic, we have the verb yalada, to give birth or to beget, which is the same as in Hebrew and as in Aramaic, but different from Arabic. For example, in Arabic, we have walada with a waw. Okay? Or if we look at this example, this is a noun. So in Ugaritic, we have yarchu, which means moon or month, but in Sabaic, this would be warcho. Okay? So first waw became ya or yod, and we see this in all Canaanite dialects, we see this in Aramaic, and we see this in Ugaritic. So this only affects nominal and verbal roots. So, for example, this does not affect the word for and, which is still wa in Ugaritic and not ya. Same as in Hebrew and Aramaic. And one other thing that Ugaritic does is that it uses a certain pattern for masculine plurals of nouns, which is we can call it the fa'aluma pattern, which means, for example, if we look at the word for king in Ugaritic, the singular is malku and the plural is malakuma. So there's a different vowel pattern. In the singular, it's malk, so consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant. In the plural, it is consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. Malakuma, but it still has the ending, and we also see this in Hebrew. If melech, even if the interior of the word, the pattern changes to melach, we still need to use the masculine ending, melachim, and we have the same thing in Aramaic. We don't have that thing in Arabic where we have pure broken plurals, jama' taksir. So in Arabic we would say muluk. We don't have to add un in Arabic. We don't say mulukun. And for kalb in Arabic we say kilab. We don't say kilabun. But in Ugaritic we would say kalabuma. Just like in Hebrew you say kalavim. Okay? And well, the script is not vocalized, so we don't see that vowel pattern. But Ugaritic has one thing. Ugaritic has 3 different signs for aleph, which is aleph followed by a, aleph followed by I, aleph followed by u. So in those instances we can actually see the vowel, which is, for example, we can see, so I will explain the signs later sign by sign, but here we can see that the aleph in the word for head is not followed by a, and we can reconstruct it as ra'shu, but the plural is written with a different aleph sign, and we can conclude that this is pronounced ra'ashuma, heads. Okay, ra'shu and ra'ashuma. This is something typical for Northwest Semitic. But Ugaritic also differs from the other Northwest Semitic languages in a couple of features. One feature is that it has quite a almost complete Semitic consonant inventory, and it has, for example, it has preserved the interdentals, that is tha, the, and the tha, and also the velar fricatives cha and ra, which we don't have, well, these ones we do have them in early forms of Hebrew, but in Tiberian Hebrew they disappear. We don't have the interdentals in Hebrew. And in Aramaic, actually in Old Aramaic we have them, but later from official Aramaic on, which is also known as Imperial Aramaic, we don't have these sounds either. They've merged with other sounds. So, for example, tha has become sheen or sh in Hebrew, but t in Aramaic. And yeah, the others have merged with other sounds accordingly. There's also no indication for the so-called Canaanite shift in Ugaritic, which is This is where it differs from Canaanite. So Canaanite shift means long A, Proto-Semitic A became O, which is, for example, in Hebrew we say shalom with O, shalom. Whereas in Arabic we would say salam with long A. And Hebrew in this respect is more like Arabic, so it retains the original Proto-Semitic long A sound, and in Ugaritic we would say shalamu. Okay, what else? Ugaritic also has retained the case vowels, and we also know this thanks to the 3 different aleph signs. So we have attestations for this word, chair or throne, with these 3 different aleph signs, and we can reconstruct it as kussa'u, kussa'a, kussa'i, so nominative, accusative, and genitive respectively. And something very similar we have with verbs. We have 3 different mood vowels. So for example, this verb to call, qara'a, we have those 3 mood forms, yaqra'u, yaqra'a, and yaqra'. And if you know classical Arabic, this is also what we've got in classical Arabic. We don't have this, or we have some remains at best, but normally this is disappeared from, for example, from Hebrew and Aramaic and those other Northwest Semitic languages. There is also something that is very peculiar in Ugaritic. There's no preposition min, from. Ugaritic uses li instead to say from, and then uses special verbs that make it clear that li in this context does not mean to, towards, but more like from. I think there may be some examples of this in the text that I will show you later. And something else that is peculiar for Ugaritic, the verb to say is ragama. It is not amara or something like that as in Hebrew and Aramaic. And also to be in Ugaritic is kana and not haya or something like that, like in Hebrew or Aramaic. And this, we also have this in Phoenician. And interestingly, I think there's some more features where Ugaritic is similar to Phoenician, which is probably due to language contact, because if you look at a map, Ugaritic is directly north to the Phoenician-speaking area. They were direct neighbors, a similar culture. They were sea traders, directly very close to the Mediterranean Sea. So surely there was a lot of contact, language contact, trade, and cultural exchange, which is why we see some overlapping features between Phoenician and Ugaritic. So let's talk about the alphabet. This is the important part of this video, how to read it. So how do you read and pronounce Ugaritic? How did they write? It was written in a cuneiform abjad. What is a cuneiform abjad? Cuneiform is the writing technique, which is just like the Akkadian cuneiform you saw in the last video, means a stylus is pushed into or is pressed into wet clay to form these shapes, these cunei. Abjad means it is not a syllabary and it does not have logographic signs as Akkadian, but it has consonant signs, so similar to the Phoenician alphabet and what followed, that is Arabic and Hebrew. It has signs like b, d, g, etc. No syllables, but consonant signs. It has 30 characters, which is, for example, significantly more than Hebrew, for example, or the Phoenician alphabet. The sign order is preserved, and I will show it to you in detail later. But we know from these abecedaries that are preserved that the sign order represents the Phoenician sign order, the Abagada order, or the Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet order. And yeah, like I said, it had a larger sign inventory than Phoenician, and it starts with A, so Alif followed by A, Bet, Gimel, Cha, Dalet, etc. Yeah, so I will use, when I talk about the letters, sometimes I use the Hebrew names, sometimes the Arabic names, because we don't know exactly if the letters of the Ugaritic alphabet had names and what they were. So yeah, I will refer to them as something like Alif with A, Bet, Gimel, Cha, Dalet, or maybe Aba, Ga, Cha, Da, just to make it clear what I'm talking about. There's also a different version of the Ugaritic abjad or the Ugaritic alphabet, which is known as the Ugaritic short alphabet. And yeah, I will talk about that later, but I will focus on what is written in the normal or in the Ugaritic long alphabet, and I will explain why later. So let me just show you some examples on how to read this. So as I said, this is a consonant script. This is a line from a Ugaritic text, and we have consonant signs. So the first one would be th. You can see the transliteration here. So this is th. This one is m or meme, whatever you want to call it. And this tiny sign is a word divider, which is put between all words in a line. So th, meme, word divider. Ha, ra, ba, ma. Let me call the letters like this. Ha, ra, ba, ma. Word divider. Alif followed by I, ta, sa. So that's how you transliterate it. And then you need to reconstruct the vowels based on different things, like comparing Ugaritic to other Semitic languages. And also there are some Ugaritic texts that are written in Akkadian cuneiform, which means they are syllable signs, which means we know the vowels. So based on those different sources, we can reconstruct the vocals of Ugaritic, and we can conclude that this was Thamma Harbama Ittasi, which would translate to there with a sword I will lay waste. Let's look at the next line. So next line, alif with a, n, sh, qa, so like qaf or quf, word divider, ba, ha, ta, ma. Okay, this is the transliteration. This is the reconstruction. Anashiq bahatima. I will burn down the house, or in this context, I will burn down his house. And this line reads, Le arsi yapulu ulaniyu. The powerful one will fall to the earth. And you've probably recognized a couple of words that you know from other Semitic languages, like ars. So nominative would be arsu. This is in the genitive because there's a preposition before it, le arsi, which would be ard in Arabic, or aghas in Hebrew, or ar'a in Aramaic. Okay, so you recognize a couple of things. And you will see this throughout my video. Other than Akkadian in the last video, which did not really sound like a typical Semitic languages, Ugaritic, the way I read it, would actually sound like a very typical, let's say, Central Semitic language. So on the one hand, it is very typical Semitic. It has emphatic consonants. It has pharyngeals like ha and ayn, so all the sounds you know from Arabic, for example. On the other hand, there's not much in Ugaritic phonology that is surprising or that I need to point out. So in this respect, yeah, there are little surprises in Ugaritic pronunciation, at least judging on how much we know about Ugaritic pronunciation. So it will be quite a typical Central Semitic language, we can say, I guess. So let's start with the individual signs, sign by sign. So this is the first sign. In transliteration, it typically looks like this. So we write an A with this alif sign that we use in Semitic transliteration. So this is alif followed by a, and it can represent actually two sequences of phonemes. So either a glottal stop followed by short a or by long a. So this can represent, actually this is kind of a syllabic sign and can represent the two syllables a and a. This is the letter B, whatever they called it, maybe bet, maybe bite, I don't know. So this is like the Hebrew beth or the Arabic ba, and this is pronounced like a B. There was no spirantization of begat kafat as in Hebrew, so this was probably always pronounced like a ba sound. You will see throughout this list of consonants, and there's not much I need to explain, so this is basically just a B. Next sign is this one. This is just the consonant g, so like a hard G, okay, like gimel. This one is ha. Okay, again, not much to explain. Ha, like the Arabic ha is in khamsa. And this would be the D, Arabic dal or Hebrew daleth. So this is the consonant ha, so the normal glottal H sound, ha, as in Arabic huwa, like he, huwa, wahiya. So this is what would be equivalent to the waw in other Semitic languages. So its main function is the consonant waw, as in the word wa, and sometimes it seems like sometimes it was used as a vowel sign, similar to how Hebrew and Arabic do it, but much less consistently. So long vowels were almost never represented in writing. It seems like it was only in very rare cases where the wow actually presented a long oo vowel. So mostly you will not see any sign of long vowels at all in the Ugaritic text. So this one is the Z, so like Arabic Zai or Hebrew Zayin. Some people claim that this may have been an affricate. I didn't find a lot of convincing evidence, so I think this idea is mostly based on Proto-Semitic and maybe comparison to some Semitic names and words that are attested in, for example, in hieroglyphs. Yeah, nobody seems to be really sure. So the pronunciation, just to sum this up, could have been either z, so just a sibilant z, or maybe an affricate z. Okay, so this could have been more like a zai. I'm not quite sure. In my sample text, I will stick with a z pronunciation, with a pure sibilant, without a stop at the beginning of the segment. So this one is the pharyngeal fricative, which means ha, so like the Arabic ha, like in himar, ha. This one is the emphatic T. So yes, it's hard to tell whether emphatics in Ugaritic were glottalized or pharyngealized. So maybe they were ejectives. So this would have been ta, but yeah, there doesn't seem to be any really solid evidence for ejectives in Central Semitic altogether. So I guess it's safe to say this was probably more like ta, like Arabic ta. So another glide. So this is ya, equivalent to Hebrew yod or yod. And so yeah, the main function was a consonant y, as in the verbs I showed you before, for example, yalada, or the word yarch, month. But this may have also, in a very rare, in a few cases, may have been a vowel sign for the long e. But again, normally in Ugaritic text, you will not see long e vowels at all. You need to reconstruct them based on what you know about Semitic phonology or your Semitic vocabulary. So normally this sign will represent a consonant yeah. Yeah, so this is the K, kaf, kaf Arabic, or kaf in Hebrew. And this would be the sheen. Okay, so pronounced like Arabic sheen and Hebrew sheen. Etymologically, it's identical to Hebrew sheen, but Arabic seen. So we will see this, for example, in the word for peace. In Hebrew, it's shalom, Aramaic shlama, Arabic salam, and in Ugaritic, we would have shalamu. This is the L. I don't think I need to explain the letter L. So yeah, I'm saying it like English L, but it's actually not that velarized probably. So I guess it's more like L, as in lamb. Yeah, this would be the M, like meme or meme. And this is like thal, and this letter is quite rare in Ugaritic. It is very often, so Sometimes we find it where we expect it, but very often it is replaced by dal, by the D. So it seems like Ugaritic was already in the middle of the process of merging this sound with the plain D sound, just like Aramaic did, for example, and just like many modern Arabic dialects do. So I think in some texts you won't find this at all, and it'll always be replaced by D. So this is an M, okay, not much to explain. This is equivalent to the Arabic letter va, and yeah, the pronunciation may have been the same, va. So a pharyngealized that kind of sound. Maybe it was voiceless, maybe it was fa, but the evidence isn't enough. So let's just for this video keep this as va, as a voiced sound. So this is the plain S. This is equivalent to Hebrew samech. Again, this just like the zai, this may have been an affricate, so Semiticists aren't sure whether this was pronounced sa or tsa. So I will stick with sa in this video. This is ein, so a voiced pharyngeal fricative or a kind of pharyngeal approximant. Ein, the Hebrew equivalent would be ayin, so like the word for eye, Arabic ein, and in Ugaritic, the eye, you know, the thing that you need to look, the eye, would be ainu. So this is a P sound. It did not become, apparently did not become F as in Arabic, so we will have this P sound instead. The emphatic S, again, may have been an affricate, so could have been either saw or tsa. We cannot be sure. It is equivalent to Hebrew sadi or modern Hebrew tzadik and Arabic sad. Yeah, so I will stay, again, I will not use those affricate pronunciations in this video, and I will pronounce this sa. This is the emphatic K, so probably qa, as the Arabic qaf. So this is the rhotic sound, and other than Akkadian, which had a r kind of sound, a guttural R sound, Ugaritic, well, we don't know exactly, but I guess it was an apical trill, so like r, r, rashu, for example. Okay, this sounds probably more familiar to people who know Semitic languages, more familiar than Akkadian reshu. And here we have the tha, so like in thalatha. And this is the equivalent to Arabic rain, r, r. And finally, the last letter of the Ugaritic alphabet, ta. So ta, tav, whatever you want to call it, but it's basically a T sound. Alright, this is the Ugaritic alphabet. And now, these are some extra signs that are added to the end of the alphabet. I will show you the complete alphabet and the order of the alphabet, but you know from Hebrew that tav is the last letter of the alphabet, but Ugaritic has 3 more letters added to the end of the alphabet. So the first one of those 3 is this this sign, which is transliterated like this. So the vowel I with this comma above, which symbolizes the aleph, the glottal stop, and it is basically aleph followed by e or similar vowels. So it can actually represent 4 different phonemes or phoneme sequences. It can be a glottal stop followed by short e. It can be a glottal stop followed by a long e. It can be a glottal stop followed by e. E is the Ugaritic reflex of the Semitic diphthong a. So, for example, the word for house there's a long vowel. It is b2. Okay, so this is the long e, and this sign apparently also represents the glottal stop or the aleph not followed by any vowel, which means in the coda, in the end of the syllable, like in the word I showed you before, ra, shu, the word for head, okay, ra, shu, so syllable final or a syllable closing glottal stop. Similarly, we also have a alif sign followed by u, so this represents u, or o. So o is the Ugaritic reflex of the Proto-Semitic diphthong au, as in death, mode. Okay, and so this is the glottal stop followed by o, which comes from this contracted diphthong. And the last sign is probably the most mysterious one. It is transliterated like this, an S with a grave accent, and it is a very rare sign. It occurs in some loanwords, some Indo-European loanwords, some I think from other languages, maybe from Hurrian, I guess. But sometimes it also occurs in Ugaritic words that are definitely purely Semitic. And very often it seems like it can be simply replaced by the normal S, by the S letter I showed you before. In shape it is quite odd. It has more wedges than any of the other signs, yet it looks a little different, a little similar actually to the West Semitic Sheen sign. So it looks like it has, let me show you what I mean. Let me use a red pen. So it has similarity to the Sheen, to the Hebrew Sheen, for example, but nobody seems to know exactly what this letter is supposed to, what its function is, and why is it there? Why is there not just S? So it may differ in pronunciation, of course. Some Semiticists have suggested that it may actually be a syllable sign, like the two letters before, the Aleph E and Aleph U are also actually syllable signs. This may have been one as well, representing the syllable Su, which is very odd. Why would you need that? I mean, you don't have any other syllable signs. You don't have fa, fi, fu, or something like that in Ugaritic. So yeah, this is a little mysterious. There seems to be a quasi-consensus that this is pronounced tsa. I will pronounce it tsa if it comes up in my text, but yeah, this is, like I said, the most mysterious letter in the Ugaritic alphabet, and nobody seems to have a real answer or solution why this sign exists at all. So let's look at the order. Luckily, we have a couple of clay tablets that simply contain abecedaries, that is the pure alphabet, nothing else, no entire words or sentences, just tablets with the alphabet on it. Apparently they were exercises for scribal students, so for people who are educated to become scribes. And there are several tablets that have this order, which is the North Semitic order. So the same order of signs that we have in Hebrew, Aramaic, Phoenician, Arabic, etc. So the Alif Bet Jim Dal or Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet order. But what is remarkable about Ugaritic, you know that it has more signs than the Phoenician alphabet, but the extra signs are not just added at the end, but they are in between the other letters, which is a strong sign that this is original, so that this order is older than, for example, the Phoenician alphabet, and the Phoenician alphabet has just deleted the signs that the Phoenicians did not need. So, which is why, for example, here we have ha between Gimel and Dalet. Here we have Shin. You know, in Phoenician it comes between Resh and Tav, but here it has a different position in the alphabet. Whereas where the Phoenician alphabet has Shin, we have Tha in Ugaritic. So later the letter Tha was replaced, or it was repurposed to represent the Sheen consonant. Also here we have Dal and Va and Rein. So these were apparently the original positions of those letters in some kind of alphabet that is older than Ugaritic and Phoenician, and that gave rise to those other alphabets. but this seems to be the original order of the consonants in those ancient North Semitic scripts. So this is preserved in Ugaritic, but there may have been other scripts. Maybe this was the original order of those consonants in the Proto-Sinaitic script or something like that, and the Wadi al-Hol script, who knows. But yeah, this is the original order, and you can see it here in comparison with the Hebrew alphabet. And these three are added at the end, so these seem to be Ugaritic innovations, just adding these two syllabic signs E and U at the end and repurposing the aleph to represent aleph plus A, and then this extra S at the end, that mysterious letter. So it seems like that's how the Ugaritic alphabet came into existence. Interestingly, there's one other abecedary, one other tablet with an alphabet, but that tablet has a different order, and we know that order from the Old South Arabian alphabet, which we can call the South Semitic order. It is also somehow, at least in parts, preserved in the Ethiopic script in the Fidel, but this is almost 100% the same order as we know it from Old South Arabian, including Sabaic, for example. So starting with ha, with ha, la, ha, ma, qa, wa, sha, ra, and you can see the ESA epigraphic South Arabian equivalents below. There are only a couple of differences. The ba has a different position. Okay, you can see in epigraphic South Arabian it comes between ra and ta, but in that Ugaritic order it comes between ha and pa. And here in epigraphic South Arabian we have this S number 3 letter that we don't have in Ugaritic. Apparently it's not needed. And we have the dha added at the end in epigraphic South Arabian, whereas in Ugaritic it is here and in position is equivalent to Old South Arabian dha. Okay, apart from that it's almost the same thing. Also, this abecedary lacks the aleph E, aleph U, and the S number 2 signs. We only have the aleph A in the same position where Old South Arabian has the aleph. Okay, so this order is ha, la, ha, ma, qa, wa, sha, ra, ta, sa, ka, na, ha, ba, pa, a, dha, ga, da, ra, ta, za, za, ya, tha, sa. And we only have one specimen of this. The other ones, I think there's 3 of the other ones, as the Alif Bet Gimel Ha Dalet order. Let me also show you some sign variants. So here on this slide I'm using a font that I made myself and then that I have used in my old videos in Ugaritic. In the rest of this video I'm using the Noto kind of fonts made by Google because they match these other fonts here perfectly that I'm using to write English. So some of these signs have different variants. You can see mostly it's just the number of wedges that differs. So the Dalet sign, you can see 3 vertical and 3 horizontal strokes. There's also 4 and 3, 3 and 4, and also 4 and 4. Okay, sometimes the wedges are arranged a little differently, so there are minor variations between those signs, between the individual variants of those signs. So this is Alif till Ta. Here you can see Ya till Ein, Ya to Ein. Okay, not much to tell. You can see again, it's just the number of wedges or the way they're arranged, their position. Sometimes there's only one variant, like the meme. Sometimes it's just the way they are rotated, and that's basically it. Here you can see the last couple of letters, so Pa till S number 2, so the second S, the real S. So let me also briefly show you the so-called Ugaritic short alphabet. There were some texts found that have a slightly different alphabet, and one difference seems to be that there are only 20 signs, not 30. So different sign inventory size, and also those texts other than standard Ugaritic. Ugaritic is normally written from left to right, which is weird for Semitic. The Phoenician script and all its offspring signs are written from right to left. Ugaritic is normally written from left to right, but the short alphabet is also written from right to left, like Phoenician, for example. So that is one thing. Then some signs look noticeably different. And yeah, apart from that, the sign inventory is quite reduced and seems to reflect more of a Canaanite, I guess, consonant inventory. So the consonant inventory, at least how it is represented by the script, seems to be closer to Hebrew and Phoenician, for example. So it seems like it doesn't have interdentals like th and the anymore, and seems like it does not have cha and rein anymore. So these are the first 11 signs. And yeah, you see, for example, the cha sign is missing. And we don't have an epicetary, so we don't know the order, but there's no real cha sign. There's one sign that seems to represent both cha and ha, so it aligns neatly with the other Northwest Semitic sound mergers. And it's usually transliterated with an H with a line below, just to remind us that this can represent both ha and ha. Okay, so this is one merger that we can see here. In the next couple of letters, we have this whole kind of thing. It seems like it was written with the other end of the stylus, which was just pushed in the clay to produce the whole. And this represents both tha and sheen, and is in the same position where Phoenician, for example, has the sheen. It also seems like there's only one letter to represent the S and the emphatic S, so like samech and sadi. So quite a reduced consonant inventory. I'm not sure about the lexicon and the morphology, how much this differs from Ugaritic and how well it fits into Canaanite, for example. So really not sure, was this Ugaritic as all, or was this a modified Ugaritic alphabet to write something that is more closely related to Phoenician? Really not sure. I will just focus on like standard Ugaritic in this video. So let's start with a few sample texts, and like in my last video on Akkadian, the first thing I will do, I will show you a short text line by line. We will read it line by line and I explain a couple of things, and then later I will also give you another text and read it more fluently. But the first text will be line by line with explanations. So the first 3 lines, I've grouped these 3 lines together because they kind of form a sentence. So I try to group individual lines so that they make sense together. But you can see this is the first line on the tablet, this is the second line, and this is the third line. And I need to add something. All the texts that are following right now, first of all, the vocalization is not done by myself. I've used the book, A Manual of Ugaritic, written by Dennis Pardy, and he's one of the leading experts, if not the leading expert in Ugaritic, and he has vocalized all of the texts in his book. And because he is such an expert on Ugaritic, I just trusted him. He knows what he's doing, I guess, and I'm just using his vocalizations here instead of coming up something with myself and then eventually messing it up. And also, the texts in his book are all in transliteration. There are pictures of the tablets, but I did not have a look at them, so I copied the transliterations, and then based on the transliteration I wrote the Ugaritic text, so it's kind of a back translation from the transliteration. So there may be mistakes, I'm not sure, but just to keep that in mind. So my Ugaritic text is based on the transliteration, and it's not the other way around that I had a look at the tablet and then transliterated it. Okay, so the first 3 lines of this text. Tahmu iridharri li pilsia rugum. So Tahmu is message. Ugarit is a personal name, and it does not look very Semitic. In Ugarit, Ugarit was a multicultural society. There were lots of people of different backgrounds, and I think there were especially many people with Hurritic names. No, you call it Hurrian in English, I think. So many people were speaking Hurrian, and Ugaritic has lots of Hurrian personal names, also Hurrian loanwords. And Hurrian is not Semitic. It is part of the Euro-Eurasian language family, which I think is related to Northeast Caucasian. I think it's the family that also includes Chechenian. So yeah, a lot of names that don't seem Semitic. So Tahmu Uridharri, message of Uridharri le Pilsia, which means to Pilsia, and Rugum is the imperative of Ragama, and it means say. So Tahmu Uridharri le Pilsia Rugum, message of Uridharri to Pilsia, say the following. So just one line here. Yishlam Leka, may it be well with you. They probably said this rather than Shalamu Alaikumu, so maybe this is what I should have used at the beginning of this video to greet you. Yishlam Lekum, may it be well with you folks, with y'all. And to a single person, it's Yishlam Leka. And you see the transliteration, not even the E, the contracted E of Leka, is represented in writing. Le Targudassi wa le Kalbia, which means regarding Targudassi and Kalbia. So more names. The second one looks kind of Semitic, Kalbia, my dog. Shama'atu khata'i nakhta'u hatti. I have heard that they have suffered defeat. And you see, Shama'atu, I have heard. I think you've got this verb in every Semitic language. Himma I numama nakhta'u wala'ak aimmaya wayadu. So wayadu actually is the start of the second sentence. It just happens to begin in the middle of the line. So yeah, the first sentence is Himma I numama nakhta'u wala'ak aimmaya. Now, if such is not the case, like the thing that he's mentioned before, send me a message, which means to that effect. And now the second sentence, or the next sentence, starts Wayadu, pestilence, and pestilence. Ilima pa ki motuma azu ma'da. So the pestilence, what about the pestilence? Pestilence is here, meaning is at work here, for death, is very strong. You know this from Hebrew, right? Me'od, like tov me'od, ma'da. So it's with a at the end because it's an adverb. Like in Arabic, you would say jiddan with an at the end. So ma'da. Okay, in this next sentence, himma nathkapu ma'nuka wa mannama. So if they've been overcome, your reply and whatever else. So you see it stops in the middle of the sentence, and we need to have a look at the next slide. So, and whatever else. And whatever else, Rigmu du, sorry, this should have du, but it has du, as I said, du and du apparently merged in Ugaritic. So Rigmu du tishma'u thammati washit bisipri immaya. So whatever else you may hear there, put in a letter to me. Okay? Here again is the word to hear, tishma'u, you hear, thammati there, wa and shit, put, bisipri in a letter, immaya to me. And this is a short Ugaritic letter. On the next couple of slides, on the next 3 slides actually, I will give you a longer Ugaritic text, and I will read it to you, not word by word, but more fluently. And I will only give you the Ugaritic writing, and the transliteration, completely vocalized already. I will not give you the translation. I will put the translation, as I did with the last text in the Akkadian video, I will put it in the description of this video. So you can listen to this text and see how much you understand based on the knowledge of Semitic languages that you might have. See if you can understand something. If not, just enjoy it. And after that, you can read the video's description and see the translation and see how much you actually got from just listening to that Ugaritic text. Alright, have fun with the following text. Le malki Ugarit, Achia rugum, Tahmu malki surri, Achika, Yishlam leka, Iluma taghuruka, Tashallimuka, Hannaniya immani shalima, Thamaniya immaka, Mannama shalamu, Rigima Thathib. أنيك نداتي لإكت مصريما هنداتي بسري ميتة بيا جشمي أدري نشكح ورب تموتتي لقح كل ذرع بيدينهم وأناك كل ذرعهم كل نبشي وأكلهم بيدي ربي تموتتي لقحت وثثاب أناك ليهم وأنيك ثت بيا عكاي عرية وأخويا مهك بلبه اليشت. And that was a complete text in Ugaritic. Did you figure out a couple of things? Did you hear the place names mentioned? There were two cities mentioned, two Phoenician cities, namely Tyre and Acre, and also Egypt was mentioned. Maybe you could figure it out. Okay, thank you for watching my video. Also thank you for any comments that you have. Stay tuned. The next video will be on Hebrew, and it will mostly deal with the Tiberian pronunciation of Hebrew that is attested in a book from the 11th century called Hidayat al-Qari. And yeah, I will just tell you a couple of things about the Tiberian Hebrew pronunciation and Proto-Hebrew, etc. Just give me some time to prepare everything. Also stay tuned concerning the news that I sometimes publish on Instagram. I will show you some work in progress so you know where I'm at and how long it takes until my next video is finished, etc. But again, thank you, and see you next time.